Today I'm talking to Mari Arno, who is the president of the board of directors for the Arbor Thrift Shop on Washtenaw Avenue. Thank you for talking to me today.
You're welcome.
So tell me about the work of the Arbor Thrift Shop and how it functioned before the pandemic.
So the Arbor Thrift Shop has been around since 1932, and it is entirely volunteer run. It began by a group of women who saw a need in the Ann Arbor community and started gathering used clothing, bundling them up, and delivering them to people. We're now really a functioning retail establishment where we sell donated goods, gently used clothing, housewares, jewelry, books, and all of the proceeds go into emergency aid in the Ann Arbor community. And pre-pandemic, we're open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4. We have about 350 member volunteers. 250 or so of them are actively working, and about 100 are what we call sustaining members who have worked for years and years and years, still want to be a part of the organization, but are no longer able or have the time to volunteer. So if you're an active member, you have to work 6 hours a month minimum on one of the 7 committees that we have. And you had your committee. For instance, I'm a clerk, so I would work behind the desk selling all the goods. We have in-gatherers who bring all the goods in. We have markers, we have merchandisers, we have house committee, which keeps the place clean and functioning that way. We have some subcommittees of antiques, books, jewelry. It's a very well-oiled machine that's been going, as I said, for many, many years. So you would come in and you'd work your shift. Most of the shifts are 2 or 3 hours every other week, and some of them are 2 hours every week. And do your time. We have monthly luncheons, which are business meetings. So we'd have the board meeting before and then have luncheons where anywhere between 80 and 100 of the members would attend, and they get updates on what's going on at the shop. And those minutes from the luncheons went out to everyone. So everyone had information on how we were operating, how much money we were making, what we were giving away. But the mission of the shop is to give all of our money to emergency aid in the Ann Arbor area. That's what we do. That's why we're there.
How did the work of the thrift shop change when the pandemic hit last March?
So it changed pretty significantly. First of all, we had to close down, as all businesses did in March when this hit. And we were closed for 4.5 months approximately. But also, immediately upon closing, we set up a couple executive committees, subcommittees of the board, who we met weekly via Zoom to talk about the protocols, how we're going to deal with this, how can we reopen, because without being open, we have no income. Without income, we can't accomplish our mission, which is to give money away in emergency aid. So thankfully, women years back set up 2 different funds. One is an operating account, which is basically like a checking account. That's what we pay our rent through. That's what we operate with that. And it's now written into our bylaws that we have to keep a certain amount of money in that account for just such emergencies. I mean, we thought it would be like a pipe bursting and we might be closed for a few weeks or a month without income. No way did we ever consider this pandemic. But we also have a investment fund. So that fund also has to be kept at a minimum, but we can borrow from it if we need it for operations. So when we shut down, we knew we had to pay our rent and utilities and all those basic needs. We have no salaries, so we weren't eligible for the PPP grants that people were giving out, and our landlord didn't quite get that. They said, just apply for that. Well, 75% of that has to go to salary. We had no salary because we're all volunteers. So we were just spending down our operations account for that 4.5 months. We also had committed to some of our organizations monthly grants, and we felt very strongly that we didn't want to stop giving those grants because if anything, people needed more of that kind of money. So we continued that, and that was about $4,000 a month. So we continued giving that out as well. And we felt very strongly that even if we had to dip into our reserve account, that this was important. Because normally, the way we give money away is through a hotline, and we have someone who literally answers a phone. You have the job for 2 weeks, you answer the phone, the approved agencies, social workers will call and request emergency aid, and it could be for a mattress, it could be for medical, it could be for car repairs because they can't get to work, it could be for eyeglasses. I mean, it's the range is just amazing. But what's nice about our organization is within 24 hours, we can get a check to someone. And that is one of the reasons that our volunteers love to work at the shop. I feel very strongly about that mission. Well, we had to shut down the hotline because we didn't have that kind of money to give away anymore. And also, the agencies, all of a sudden, all their caseworkers are working from home. And there's not like a centralized place for them. And now we think, oh, okay, it's all working okay now, but back when everybody shut down, nobody knew what anybody was doing. Everyone's isolated at home. And, so there was not a need for emergency aid because, the people who needed the money couldn't find their caseworkers, and the caseworkers, I mean, it was like all of a sudden there were no calls, there was nothing. And it was really hard for us. We didn't have money coming in, so we knew we had to adjust it, but you knew the needs were greater out there, but it was hard for the system just, was scattered, and it was really difficult. So that was a big change for us. So we shut down our hotline. We have always had a social services email address, but we had to figure out a way to get the word out to all of the agencies and caseworkers that we're still here, and in a very limited capacity. But one of the other things that was going on right then is we give away grants in the spring. There's 2 different grants. One is a $10,000 grant out of our reserve account earnings. And the other is another account we have that was set up by a member's husband when the member passed, and for the sole purpose of providing these grants once a year, and we have to give that away. That's just, it's in the grant. So that was 3 $5,000 grants and a $10,000 grant. And at the deadline for the applications, we had, I think, 2 applications, maybe 3. And again, it was because the application deadline was the end of March. So we extended it for a month, and we're scrambling. How do we get the word out that we have these grants? Because people needed the money. So, and that continued this year as well. We did end up getting more applications. We were able to give the money away. It was also this year we had to extend the deadline. It's still, the communications has been difficult. So that was a big change. But more than that, when we have our 250 active volunteers, many of them were either compromised, living with someone who was compromised, just really cautious about re-entering regular activity, understandably. So we offered a pause in their membership for a year. And this was something that never happened before, but we were afraid if we didn't give options that we would have a lot of resignations. And we couldn't afford that because we love our volunteers and we want to keep them. So anyone could option to pause their membership for a year, up to a year from when we reopened. And many people did. I'd say a third of our membership decided to take a pause, understandably. And we were also, because of that, we were really careful about the protocols we put in place for when we did reopen, because we needed to protect our volunteers, we needed to protect our customers, the whole thing. It was scary getting back out there pre-vaccine with all of these things.
How has the shop adapted and survived since that initial shock?
So one was allowing our members to pause. We reopened last July, mid-July, and limited hours. We were open rather than 6 days a week. We were open 3.5 days a week, and we were able to mostly fill those schedules. We not all shifts were scheduled. We were filled in all the jobs, so we really put a push out to our active volunteers, the ones who were working, to start looking at becoming what I termed hybrid volunteers. So instead of just being a clerk, I would also work as a marker or a merchandiser or something else to help fill these slots that we needed on a temporary basis. And our volunteers are amazing. We had many people jump in and take on new roles and work more hours than was required to keep their membership in order to keep the shop going. We also added a new position, which was put a little more pressure on our volunteers. We needed to have a greeter at the door so that we could monitor how many people came into the shop, because we were limited based on our size to 10 customers at a time. So we had to keep track of how many customers were coming in and how long they were there, so that if we had a line, we could move things along, and make sure people were masked and used the hand sanitizer. And so we made that big change. We had to some extent, limit donations because once we reopened, the donations were overwhelming. People had been home for months, cleaning things out, and they were delighted to have a place to take their things. So our in-gatherers have been amazing at dealing with this overwhelming donations. It's a good problem to have, but we're a very small space, so that made it tricky, but we've managed to do that. We also needed to change our scheduling in that a couple times a year, we would have a big changeover where we'd take out all the spring and summer, have bag sales, and then have a big opening day of all the fall and winter stuff. And also in the spring, get rid of winter, start spring. And those days we would have, before we even opened, we'd have 30 people in line to come in and shop. And we couldn't have that anymore because we could only have 10 people. So we stopped doing those. We couldn't have our bag sale to get rid of things. And so we just had weekly sales, which would help clean out things. And then slowly, like for the holidays, slowly put out the holiday things. And for spring, slowly mix the spring summer clothes in with the winter clothes as we put sales on long sleeve shirts or long pants or outerwear and that kind of thing. And so it's a much smaller way of moving our merchandise around, which is good and bad. We're setting up the expectation that we always have a sale going on, which is not really our purpose, but it's working okay. So it's the best we can do right now until we can reopen to full occupancy and have our big events again, which are great. They bring in a lot of money, so they're really great. So that's been a change. I think those are the biggest changes.
What do you think has been the hardest part?
I think is restructuring our giving. The hotline is still not open, and once we opened in July, we came up with a budget for how much we could give away a month, and we're up to giving away $12,000 a month, which in the 3 years prior to the pandemic, we gave away around $400,000 a year. We'd given away over $1 million in those 3 years. And so it's small potatoes, but we're able to do it. And we're coming in over budget every month. So we're now able to take special requests via our email for eyeglasses and things like that. So the $12,000 we give away every month are block grants. We give to Delana Center and Safe House and Avalon and Food Gatherers and Peace Neighborhood. There's St. Andrews. So there are certain organizations. Housing and food security are the two big focuses we chose for now. But it's great that we're starting to get these requests in. We're delighted about that. So for people who need eyeglasses, we can do that. We can write a check so they can get eyeglasses. Also clothing vouchers, which we hadn't been able to do because we were limited at people in the shop. So we have, on our off days, we have people coming in to fulfill clothing vouchers for people who are, had to leave everything behind to go to Safe House, or interviewing for a job and need some clothes or need a winter coat. So we are starting to be able to do that again too. So that has been our hardest thing, not being able to really fulfill our mission to the extent that we want to. And outreach to the agencies has been really difficult because they're still kind of scattered, and just now people can come back and work in offices and things like that. So that's been really hard.
Has anything about this period of time surprised you?
I wouldn't say this is a surprise, but it's just an assurance. I always knew this was here, but the resiliency of our membership has been amazing. Just even the members who chose to take a pause or chose to go sustaining, they've been very actively involved. I've been sending out regular emails, and I get a lot of response back from that. People have been incredibly positive about the protocols we've had in place, and very, I feel comfortable coming into work. And the dedication of the board has been unbelievable because it's a lot more work. We've had more meetings, and each committee chair sends out weekly emails to the committee. Part of it is just, we've got these openings next week. Could anyone step in and fill them? But this is how much money we brought in. This is what's going on in the shop this week. And that's never happened before. Usually they do their monthly report and it goes into the minutes. They go out to the membership. And but there's been a need for communication because we haven't had our luncheons. So we haven't been able to do any of that. So just so impressed with that with the membership, the resiliency, the dedication, and the positive attitude everyone's been keeping. It's really been great. And our customers have been great too. So many of them comment on how they love having a greeter, so we will be keeping that position in some form or another. They love having someone welcome them in, and they are so appreciative of the protocols. The other thing we've learned about our customers is a lot of them use the thrift shop as a release, as a way to de-stress, a place to go when they just need to get out and, just wander around and look at our wonderfully merchandised things and, buy something for $2 and be very happy. And but having someone standing at the door, we've recognized regular customers that come back time and time again and really use it as a mental health outlet. And that's a service we didn't really realize we provided, but we do. So that's been great.
So what kind of changes are you looking forward to in the next 6 months?
So getting our members back, the paused membership is up on July 21st. So my job right now is to gently nudge people back into their positions. And being able to reopen. So beginning that week, we're opening up one more day on Mondays, but I really hope in the next 6 months that we're open back to our full-time 6 days a week, and that we're able to recruit more members. It's been hard to recruit during the pandemic, so get more new members in. I'm really looking forward to having our board meetings in person. We're actually having our July board meeting in person, my last one. I'm delighted. And in September, starting up our member meetings, luncheons again, and because that has really been missed. I know a lot of members really miss that. It's a good connection. It's a good social connection for the volunteers, as well as being informative about what's going on in the shop. So that will be starting, and being open full time and being able to fulfill our mission, which is give away emergency aid and in a bigger fashion. My presidency will be marked as a low water mark for being able to fulfill the mission, but we're still here, and we're very healthy and vibrant as we move forward. So that's a really great thing.
Is there anything else you want to add?
It's been a really challenging time, and if someone had said, would you be the president of the board during a pandemic, I probably would have said no, with stronger language. But it's been challenging, but the grace that has come with it has been unbelievable, and I've learned a lot about myself. I think the shop has learned a lot about itself, and it's just all great moving forward from here. So
Thank you for talking to me today.
yeah, you're welcome.